Okay, this video concerns the knowledge of liberation according to the ancient Shastra of India. I will be reading the Brahmanandavali, which is the second part of the Taittiriya Upanishad, which has three parts. The Taittiriya Upanishad appears in the Krishna portion of the Yajurveda. Assuming I have enough energy, I will also read one or two mantras from the Shikshavali, which is the first part of the Taittiriya Upanishad. These mantras offer a different approach to knowledge than that suggested in the Brahmanandavali. I will also share one mantra from the Katha Upanishad concerning the term Shraddha. This reading will be mostly in Sanskrit, using the Devanagari script. I will use my finger as a pointer for anyone that is interested in learning to read the Devanagari script, or I should say Devanagari script. This is the method I use to learn to read the script, and I believe it is highly effective. I would caution, however, that because I cannot see the text well and I'm scanning around to see it better, my finger may go off the mark a bit, or from time to time, but I will try to correct things as I go. I will recite the text mainly in prose. However, this particular Upanishad is supposed to be sung or chanted in a particular meter. Because my comprehension of the mantras is better at this time by reciting the verses in prose, I will proceed in that way. I may chant one or more mantras at will if the right energy arises. I acknowledge the correct manner of recitation is chanting. Now, my understanding of these mantras is based on the Vedantic three-part approach to liberation through the knowledge of the Shastra. These are 1. Shravana, 2. Manana, and 3. Nididhyasana. Again, Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. So, for example, this reading will be supported by mostly Shravana, some Manana, and some Nididhyasana. Now, if you listen to this reading, that's called Shravana. If you ponder it further and try to decipher it by thinking about the words, about the mantras, that's called Manana. If you deeply ponder and meditate on the knowledge to the extent that let's say, a brief, sustained, or prolonged vanquishing of ignorance arises, that's called Nididhyasana. Now, I propose the following. The listener will hear words and phrases which I have processed internally to some degree. I will not simply utter words which I have no understanding of. Therefore, according to my theory, the information carried in my voice will imprint itself in the mind of the listener in a fundamentally more robust manner than otherwise, even if the listener has no exposure to Vedanta or Sanskrit. In short, the words to be recited have more of what I call knowledge potential. I will begin with the prayer invocation concerning peace and protection in and of the learning and teaching environment. I will also recite the Shanti mantra or peace invocation, which begins a Yajurveda and also appears as the first verse in the Shikshavali. These are prayers of boundless benefit. Finally, you might ask, what benefit would listening to this reading have? Well, the answer is I don't know about others, but I offer the following hypothetical story. Let's say that God came to me and said, David, I'll make you a deal. I will give you $1 billion if you return to me all that you have learned of Vedanta over the last 3 years? Well, my answer is no. I would refuse the offer. Now, if God said, how about $10 billion? The answer, if you could expect, would be, no, Lord, no thanks. Well, how about 1 week of learning? I think the answer would probably be no, but I have to think about that. Now, these verses, these mantras, begin usually with this symbol, or this often called the letter, which is pronounced as Om. Okay, now let me just go over that briefly and then I'll begin the reading. Okay, so Om is composed of 3 letters or 3 sounds. Ah or A. Let me see if I can squeeze that in here. A, U, and M. So the nididhyasana of this shravana, of this reading, for example, would arise by deep consideration, deep pondering of these 3 letters and this entire sound all at once. So let's say this is one approach, is that you think of So is Jagrata. What everybody experiences every day. Jagrata. Swapna. And then the what's that? Deep sleep, or sleep without dreams. And then one thing that is a very powerful way of thinking of this is that this word appears where? If it's said, if it's thought of, if it's written, it's all within space, right? Akasha. So within space is within something else, which we will discover by reciting the mantras. Okay, let's begin. Let me just make sure that I have... Okay. I think I stated that I'll go ahead and use a pointer or my finger, so that if somebody is interested in learning how to read the Devanagari script, they can learn in that manner. That's a very highly effective way of learning, which I use primarily to learn how to read this stuff. Why don't I start the whole thing by chanting the first verse, and then at some point, maybe in the preceding verses, I will resort to a prose-like reading. Okay, now let's begin. Om Brahma Vidapnoti Param Tadesha Bhyukta Satyam Jnanamanantam Brahma Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam Parame Vyoman Soshnute Sarvan Kaman Saha Brahmana Vipashiteti Tasmatva Etasmat Atmana Akashad Samputaha Akashad Vayuhu Vayoragnihi Agnirapaha Adbyaf Prithivi Prithivya Oshadhayaha Oshadhi Byaunam Anat Purushaha Sava Esha Purusho Anara Samayaha Tasya Edameva Shiraha Ayam Dakshinaf Pakshaha Ayam Uttaraf Pakshaha Ayam Atmaha idam pucham pratishtha tadapyesha shloko bhavati. Now that was chanted. I'm going to correct my pronunciation of this term here. I pronounce it the way I often hear it, but I think the correct way to pronounce it, or at least a more meaningful way, is Purusho Anarasamaya. Purusho Anarasamaya. Okay? Oh, I forgot the Shanti mantra. Okay. Well, it was on the wrong page, so let's go back to the Shanti mantra. Okay? Om Shanno Mitra Shambarunaha Shanno Bhavatvaryama Shannayindro Brahaspatihi Shanno Vishnurukramaha Namo Brahmane Namaste Vayo Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahma Vadishyami Ritam Vadishyami Satyam Vadishyami Tanmam Avatu Tadvaktaram Avatu Avatu Mam Avatu Vaktaram. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we're missing some little dots here. Now this is the invocation prayer concerning the learning and the teaching, the student and the teacher. Very powerful. And it goes like this. Om Sahanav Avatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So here you have these two dots and here you don't. This is a typo. This is correct. And then there's also a dot missing here. Yeah, there's a dot missing there because there's an M sound, as in Om. Let's go back to the Om. That dot there provides the sound of the M. And I believe this here provides the prolonged sound. So there's different takes on what these specific symbols characterize. So let's proceed. Now I'm going to go to a prose reading, continuing of the Brahmananda Vali of the Taittiriya Upanishad. Anat vai prajaf prajayante yaf kasha pritivi kashrita ato ane naiva jivanti atai nadapi yan yantyataha annagunghi bhutanam jeshtam tasmat sarvau shadamuchate sarvam vaiti anamapnuvanti Yeyanam brahmopasate annagunghi bhutanam jeshtam tasmat sarvau shadamuchate anat bhutani jayante chatanyane vartante adyate aticha bhutani tasmat anantad uchata iti Tasmat va etasmat anrasamayat anyontaratma pranamayaha tenaisha purnaha sava esha purusha vida eva tasya purusha vida tam anvayam purusha vidaha tasya prana eva shiraha vyano dakshinah pakshaha apana uttarah pakshaha akasha atma prithvi pucham pratishtha tadapye shashloko bhavati. And for each of these verses, I'm going to omit this last reading, save a little bit of time, because it's basically just saying that was the foregoing mantra. Continuing, chapter 3. Pranam deva anuprananti Manushya pashavaschaye prano hi bhutanam ayuhu tasmat sarvayushamuchyate sarvamevata ayuryanti ye pranam brahmopasate prano hi bhutanam ayuhu tasmat sarvayusham uchate iti. Tasya esha eva sharira atma yaf purvasya tasmat va etasmat pranamayat anyontara manomayaha tenaisha purnaha sava esha purusha vida eva tasya purusha vida tam anvayam purusha vidaha tasya yajur eva shiraha rigdakshinah pakshaha samottarav pakshaha adesha atma atarvangirasav pucham pratishtha tadapye shashloko bhavati. Chapter 4. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha anandam brahmano vidvan nabidheti kadashchaneti tasya esha eva sharira atma yaf purvasya tasmat tva etasman manomayat anyontaraatma Vijnanamayaha tenaisha purnaha sava esha purusha vida eva tasya purusha vida tam anvayam purusha vidaha tasya shraddhaiva shiraha ritam dakshinah pakshaha satyamuttarav pakshaha yoga atma Mahapucham pratishtha tadapye shashloko bhavati. Okay, now we're going to pull in a mantra from the Katha Upanishad, and that it concerns, in my opinion, this word Shraddha. And Shraddha is the Shiraha, the head of the Vijnanamaya Atma, okay? Of the Vijnanamaya Atma, Shraddha is the head of that. And now, this mantra from the Katha Upanishad, chapter 2, verse 3.12. This particular mantra does not use the word Shraddha, but this is a very powerful, meaningful mantra, which in my opinion concerns that term. Now, in Christian tradition, the Lord is always accusing his disciples of lacking Shraddha on the boat in the Sea of Galilee. He says, "O you of little Shraddha." So, let's continue. This Upanishad, this mantra reads as follows. Naiva vacha na manasa praptum shakyo na chakshusha asti iti bruvato anyatra katam tad upalabhyate. This is a correct statement. Now, back to the Taittiriya Upanishad, Brahmananda Vali, which is part 2 of that Upanishad.